think that gives us a little bit of a baseline and maybe context. We're quite aware many of us in the audience are not career practitioners. But we also now want to shift from setting that baseline to ask specific questions of each of the individuals based upon their experience. So I'll ask a question of each one of them. They'll each have 3 minutes to respond. And then again, we'll come back with one closing comment and make time for questions. So Rich, if you don't mind, would you please respond to this? What's something that everyone in this audience could champion to create a better career guidance planning system or outcomes?
I'd say quite simply, if we could walk away from here championing that, we fully implement a high-quality, comprehensive school counseling program in every school in the United States. That would be a major step forward. Now, there are 5 qualities that I'd like to talk about that when I think about what that would look like. First of all, we have to deal with the problem of ratios. Ask a National Model has been arguing for 250 students per counselor. Okay, clearly in many, many states that's not the case. I would argue, and I can go into my own background, but without a personalized relationship, we're not going anywhere. I mean, meaning making, I would think Phil would also agree, it's within the relational learning context that these online programs can be very helpful. Okay, so that's the first thing, ratios. Now I have some data from Connecticut, Missouri, Utah, Nebraska to kind of back that up. I'd be happy to share with you. So the second thing would be 50% of counselors' time, so half, 2.5 days every single week, should be spent on career development and college counseling activities that would incorporate this pathways idea. So be fully integrated within that and would be developmental in nature. So we all know, I mean, when does career development really start? Okay, I mean, isn't it not like gender role stereotypes? It's like kind of very, very early. You know, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics talk about stereotype threat. I'm not a math kind of person, kind of crystallizing around about what, 4th or 5th grade? Okay, is that not a career development issue? Mathematics self-efficacy and then how that blots out opportunities? It certainly is. So really focus, but at least half of a counselor's time. 30% of a counselor's time, that's 80%, would be on what we call responsive services, dealing with social emotional issues, individual crisis, referral, all of the group kind of counseling activities. So that's 80%. We need to minimize, and I think my colleagues were talking about this, non-guidance, counselors' use of their time on what we would call non-guidance tasks, low-level administrative tasks, clerical tasks, discipline, testing. I did a study for the Chicago public schools, and we talked to counselors that one of their jobs was to drive the high-stakes test over to the place where it was collected, okay, and provide test security. I mean, we have to really get out of this and move in a very different direction. And the last thing, so ratios, half time on career, 30% on responsive services, minimizing non-guidance tasks. Then we need to take a whole school approach. Okay, this is not, we're not talking about an individually oriented approach. We're talking about small group classroom interventions. I'd like to, if we have time, I'd like to share with you, I think a promising practice is to fully integrate what we're talking about into standards-based instruction. And I've got some examples from some English language arts curriculum we're developing at the middle school level, and I'd like to share with you a couple of the kind of paragraphs, some of the student writing, and you see how they're grappling with these issues about meaning. It's almost like how many of you read Heidegger? The Call of Conscience, Existential Crisis, Taking Ownership of Your Life. It's amazing, these 7th graders writing about these things. Taking charge of their life is a very, very important thing. The other thing is this is not a hard sell for students. Students like career development kinds of activities, and it always comes up on whatever needs survey you do as one of the very type things that young people want help with, and we'll talk to you about. So thinking about, I don't know if we want to go into specific data, but we've got studies from state of Connecticut, and I can show, you can't see this, but it's a nice little ascending ladder, is that as the ratios of counselors to students gets worse, discipline and suspension rates go up, okay? It's almost like an ascending ladder. You could walk right up it, okay? One of the problems is that as the dollars spent per child goes down, okay, what happens to the ratios? They get way worse. So it's like, so exactly in the schools where you want more support, support's not being provided. Okay. I also have data here from the state of Missouri. So I broke down high poverty schools and looked at those schools that had the ratio of 250 to 1. And what you see is those high poverty schools that have this 250 to 1, just looking at the ratio data, you find better graduation rates and also attendance patterns. Okay, so this is the kind of, I think, encouraging kind of good news that we would talk about, would like to share with you. In Chicago, one of the things I did is that there's like 130 so public high schools, or high schools that we looked at, and I pulled out those schools where both the principal and the counselor were saying that the career development and career counseling was going on. And it was surprising. I mean, it was very encouraging to see, that particular group, they had a larger percentage of students applying to 3 or more colleges, the percentage accepted to college they plan to attend, and they had better dropout rates. And this was from, so we connected that up to the student exit survey that as students leave the Chicago Public Schools. So this is kind of hard to connect to data. It's the same data that potholes on the road to college. I don't know if you read that report. I have another little graph here from Chicago where as the percentage of students on free and reduced lunch increase across high schools, what you find are the counselors are doing way more non-guidance tasks. So it's in those very schools that we would want to have counselors delivering these kinds of services that I don't really believe that they are to that extent. At least I would put that out there. So now think about this as a whole school approach. This is a middle school curriculum we've been working on where it's fully integrated into Common Core ELA standards. The counselor works as part of an interdisciplinary team. The special education teachers involved, the librarians involved, obviously the classroom ELA teachers involved, and the counselors go into the classroom and deliver integrated lessons. Okay. Now, I've got 2 paragraphs I'd like to share with you that kind of I think captures for me what I'm trying to get at. And this is the first one is this is an urban school. This is a young African-American woman, 7th grade, who actually scored on our Massachusetts MCAS and the advanced, so that she scored at the very top. But 4 months before she took this test, this is what she wrote. And this was part of a so we delivered inquiry and research-based instruction about how to write, so it was part of the Common Core standards. But what they were investigating was, what do I want to be as I grow up? What do I want for myself? How am I going to take charge of the middle school to get me going to where I want to go? Okay, so this is what she said. She goes, "My life is a bright purple book with a white question mark that pops on the cover. Each page is silky smooth with a gold border around the edges. As I open my book and jump in, I begin to walk. As I am walking, I hear many stories of the struggles I will face and already have. In the sky, I see myself fighting those struggles, and in the end, I come out on top. This makes me optimistic for what the future will hold. I stop to feel the soft, warm air as it touches my cheek. Then I take a deep breath in and smell nothing but my aspirations. As I walk deeper into my book, I taste success, something I long for. This is the best feeling in the world." Not too shabby, huh? Yeah. Optimism and aspirations were 2 of our vocabulary words, and so we also then linked up what the career development outcomes were associated with optimism and aspiration. So, but the best predictor of the gains from 6th grade to 7th grade on the MCAS was this making of a personal commitment to being successful and making informed career and college decisions. Okay, and this ties up with other work that we've done. So it's an issue of synergy, the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. Working as part of an interdisciplinary team, you really can bring this to scale, and it can be sustained within a school setting. Okay, so we're really not talking about individual approaches. Okay, that's the first one. So I call that first one "Life is Good." Okay, here's the second one. Life is upset. I'm standing in the middle of the road waiting for something. I gaze up at the white clouds and I notice its color change from a happy blue to a mean gray. The icy raindrops hit my skin like a TV smashing into a wall. The wind was moving the trees as if it wants to pull it by the roots. That's when it hit me. A whirlwind is coming. My life is just like that whirlwind. It goes round and round. The whirlwind was too fast because I had to manage a lot of things, especially when I lost my grandmother. Way before she left, my life was so great and fun, I never had whirlwind. after she left, my life went downhill. This is when the whirlwind had just begun. I was very optimistic that it would slow down. I was wrong. Okay. Now, talk about hearing the voices of students as they talk about. So when I talk about career development, I'm talking about focusing on positive futures is some of the best ways to get at social and emotional development as well. So how many of you know about wraparound schools and dealing with the full, right? Really, so do you know about wraparound schools and about, okay, so how would you go about, when I read this, as a psychologist, as a counselor, I've worked in a number of different settings, it's like saying, okay, here's a young person I need to be providing some support to. Okay. And you can, so by talking about positive futures, you can get to every social emotional issue that you want to talk about. So I've had a lot of experience working with kids in incarceration, adolescents coming in and out of jail programs, psychiatric hospitals. I would argue that if you really want to get some traction, think about the hopefulness about positive futures. So when we talk about this, we're talking about holistic development, academic achievement, career development, and social emotional development wrapped in. And I would say time to deliver the really good future planning that's based on a lot of optimism. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Do you want to highlight the journal that you just edited that includes much of this data?
Professional school counseling. So we did a journal where studied down in the state of Nebraska. We had 6 states, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Nebraska, Utah, Missouri, I hope that's 6, and Wisconsin.
That was December of 2000.
I just remembered my NCAA brackets, Wisconsin.
Okay.
But I'd be happy to share with you. Part of the problem is that a lot of the work we do gets wrapped up in journals, and then it doesn't get out into the field. And it should be criticized too. Please don't ever take anything that we would say in faith, but we need to get it out into the debate because we go through a fairly lengthy review process as we do that, and then only certain people have access to it. So it would really somehow we have to get that information out into the field.
Could you give us the rest of the
December 2013.
Yes, December 2. It just came out.
12, right,
Yeah.
thank you.
But I'm saying,
Yeah, right.